Hey, what is going on, guys? In this video today, we're going to be going over an interesting topic in my opinion, the recent rise in popularity of exponential aim settings in Fortnite. A few weeks ago, I made a video about the best sensitivity for both linear and expo players based on what the top controller pros were using, and one of the things that I briefly noted in that video without even really thinking twice about it was the fact that it really seemed like it was a lot easier to find top-level exponential players for that video than it has been in the past. Back 8 to 10 months ago when I did a similar video, I really struggled to find even 5 pro controller players that used exponential. I seriously think 90+% of them at the time were using linear, and that isn't even an exaggeration. But this time around, it was a lot easier. I really only needed to check like 12 controller pros before I found 5 expo players, and even though that's a small sample size, it still definitely surprised me. But even then, at this point, I really didn't think too much about it, but over the past few days, I've seen probably 5 to 8 different tweets from top controller pros specifically asking about exponential, or maybe just linear versus exponential in general. And when I say that, it doesn't mean that I'm searching for these tweets, they've just been randomly appearing on my timeline from guys like Knight, Furious, Assault, very well-known controller players to say the least. And whenever I look at the replies to these tweets, let's just say things can get kinda heated. I see all these crazy debates going back and forth about what expo's better at compared to what linear's better at, and people are very clearly passionate about this topic. So to try to add some unique insight to this, I decided to do something a bit interesting. For about a 48 to 72 hour time period, I switched from using linear settings to using exponential. I don't think this gameplay was on Expo, but I'm pretty sure either my previous one was or next one will be. I'm someone who's used linear for about 8 months now if I had to guess. If I recall correctly, when Legacy was removed, I tried Expo for a few days at first since it was most similar to Legacy, but then everybody basically told me that linear was better because, like I said earlier, at that time that's what everybody was using, so I gave in to the peer pressure and switched because of that, and that's what I've used since then. So I expected the transition to be a bit rough, and don't get me wrong, it definitely was at first, but after about the first 24 hours or so, I felt a lot more comfortable, and because of that, I feel like I can give some personal insight in the linear versus expo debate from a first-hand point of view. So we'll discuss that and one or two other various things in this video, and without further ado, let's get right into it. Alright, so one of the things that I want to say right off the bat is that I really underestimated how different exponential feels compared to linear. Obviously, I knew they were different and I knew I was going to have to change sensitivity once switching, but I really thought that I was only going to need to take my linear settings and bump them up 5% each and be good to go, but in reality, that wasn't the case at all. I now understand why almost all the top expo players use 50% or 60% values for their non-ADS speed, because with the aim acceleration of expo, even with no look dampening time, everything just feels so much slower than linear, but of course you just combat that by raising your sensitivity. So I eventually found sensitivity values I liked, played about 20 to 25 games total over the span of the roughly 3 days I used expo, and here were my most notable takeaways. Without a doubt, the biggest positive of exponential for me was the AR aim. That really shouldn't come as a massive surprise to anyone because that's always mentioned as one of the biggest positives of using expo, but the difference between my AR aim while using it compared to using linear was really night and day. Because of the built-in aim acceleration that Expo has, tracking a player at medium to long range with an AR just feels so much smoother and more precise. Even though I use a relatively low ADS sensitivity on linear, at times my aim just feels really jittery when I'm trying to track a player, especially at long range, but when I'm on Expo, it just feels so much smoother and like you have so much more control over the crosshair. I wish I could give a better description than that, but it really is something you need to experience firsthand to understand. When it came to closer range aim, it was a little bit of a mixed bag. I've heard a lot of people say that they actually think their shotgun aim is a lot better on expo, and even though I wouldn't go as far as saying a lot better, as I got more comfortable as time went on, I do think my shotgun aim felt a tad bit better than it did on linear. It's kind of hard to put into words why it felt better, but I saw a tweet by someone saying it just feels like pumps hit harder on expo for whatever reason, and I really did feel that when I used it, even though I can't give a full explanation on why that would be the case. And again, that was with me only playing 3 days total, so who knows how much better it would have been if I had used it for longer. However, when it came to close range SMG aim, I definitely felt noticeably worse on expo than I did on linear. Aim acceleration can be great for making precise movements, which are important when aiming with an AR or shotgun, but with SMGs, it's much more about moving around quickly because you're mostly spraying the entire time. Now, this is less of an important aspect of aiming than it's been in the past, and I think that's a big reason why Expo is gaining more traction now compared to the last few seasons. Barrel stuffing with linear is incredibly OP, and I think we all know that, but with Expo, I'd only describe it as pretty OP. In my opinion, it isn't a massive deal as long as SMGs stay fairly balanced like they are now, but if they go back to being absolute death lasers, I think Expo takes a hit and linear obviously gets a bump. So I think that wraps up pretty much every aspect of aiming. Now let's talk about how I felt with building and editing. And to be honest, when I was on Expo, the answer is not very good. I definitely expected this to some degree, but I really did underestimate how annoying aim acceleration is when you're doing an edit or build battling. Just think about doing something as simple and easy as a top row 3-tile edit. On linear, since your crosshair moves the same speed from start to finish, you just make one simple flick and it's very consistent and controlled. With Expo though, due to aim excel, at first the crosshair moves very slowly, and then towards the end the speed increases exponentially as the name suggests. So I just always felt like I was missing edits because I hit confirm too early or too late, I was misplacing builds when doing retakes or 90s that I never would on linear, and a bunch of other little mistakes as well that definitely added up. I've seen some people describe building and editing on Expo as clunky, and I really do think that sums it up well based on what I experienced. So overall, I think it's fair to say that aiming on Expo is probably better than aiming on linear, but linear has a clear advantage when it comes to building and editing. That's what I experienced, and I've heard multiple other people say the same thing, so there's a pretty strong consensus there. I personally am going to go back to linear since I think aim is my strongest skill while building and editing are weaker, so I'd rather get a boost to those if that makes sense. However, I think the rise of Expo is definitely here to stay, and over the next few months I expect more and more controller players to switch to it or at least give it a very serious try. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you watched the entire thing, be sure to let me know with a comment down in the comment section below. Pretty straightforward and expected question here based on the video. Do you currently use linear or exponential if you're a controller Fortnite player? Be sure to leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe, turn on post notifications, do whatever the heck you want, and I will catch you guys next time.